Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Lacona, and tonight I am joined by a special friend of mine. His name is Dr. David Wood, and here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, David Wood. Hey, thanks
How
for
you doing,
coming on,
Mike?
man. Hey, everyone, this is my very first live, doing this live. Sometimes I interview people. Uh, we got a special one coming up starting January 4th, Monday the 4th, and then that Thursday, the following Monday, and then the following Thursday. I just on Christmas Eve, whoa,
What's that?
all right, hang on a second. Now that is weird. I just heard myself talking.
Do you have a laptop or something open?
What's that?
Do you have a laptop open or anywhere or something? Oh, no, no, no. If you have YouTube open on your computer somewhere, then you'll need to go to
Okay,
the YouTube video.
gotcha. All right.
Click. Yeah,
Yep.
in the
Okay. Sorry,
there we go.
everyone. Like I said, this is my first one doing this, and so glad to have an expert with David Wood here. He's the master at this stuff. Anyway, listen. As I mentioned, I just interviewed on Christmas Eve Dale Allison. He's got a brand new book coming out, called "The Resurrection of Jesus: Apologetics, Polemics, History." That's it. Apologetics, polemics, history. And he is the professor of New Testament studies at Princeton Theological Seminary. His book is a little longer, just a little bit longer than my big book on the resurrection. We're going to be talking about that. He is not an evangelical. He's a good guy, brilliant, brilliant scholar, one of the finest New Testament scholars in the world. That starts Monday, a week from tomorrow, Monday, January 4th, and there will be 4 parts: Monday, Thursday, Monday, Thursday. But this is the first time I've done this live, and so I'm sure I'm going to make some mistakes tonight, but David's here to help me. Hey, let me say a little about David. We go back, David, I don't know, it's close to 20 years, right?
Uh, I believe it's 20 years. I've known you longer than I met Nabil and Marie, who's my wife now, the year after I met you. So
That's
it's
pretty
been a
amazing.
while.
So
Hmm.
you love me more, huh?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Hey, yeah, it was pretty cool. You know, there was Mark Rion, Pastor Mark Rion. I forgot the name of the church, but he had a church on the campus of Old Dominion University, and
It was called Crossroads.
Crossroads. Cool. And I
Hmm.
can remember coming to me, and he said, I'd spoken at the church a few times, and he said, "Hey, Mike, I got a couple of students, and I got an English prof, and they're really interested in apologetics. Would you mind discipling them?" And I thought, well, I really haven't discipled someone before, but I guess I could help them along in apologetics. And he said, "Well, consider it. These are really sharp students." And I was inclined to say no, just because I was working on my a book at that time with Gary Habermas, the case for the resurrection of Jesus. Went back and talked to Gary, and he said, "Well, Mike, you probably should do it. You never know what it could come about." And some really cool stuff. I mean, we had this group called the Dream Team, and Amy Ponce, English prof. Boy, she was sharp.
Hmm.
She end up helping me with debate prep for a while, and then there was Bruce Frazier who joined us later. Do you keep up with Bruce?
Yeah, he's a Kiwi now.
Yeah, doing apologetics ministry over in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And of course, then there's David Wood in that group. And then later
Hmm.
on, his wife to be, Marie, he ends up leading her to Christ. And then he says, "Hey, could you mind if I bring my best friend, Nabil Qureshi? He's a Muslim." I said, "Well, that's going to change things, the dynamics of our group." But we all decided that we would do that. And David invited him, and he joined our group. And boy, things did change at that point. We had a really good time together.
Hmm.
But we all just we respected one another. Boy, we'd go after each other though. We'd do it in a,
Hmm.
in a kind way, a respectful way. But no one was safe. If you presented your views, you knew you were going to get challenged on them. But everybody understood that. We respected that. We enjoyed it, and we all developed just a real love for one another and friendships. I mean, David and Marie, Debbie and I consider them like family. I mean, this is a friendship we'll have for the rest of our lives. It's just we're pretty tight. Love these guys just like their family. And So David, what got you interested in Islam?
Oh, you already mentioned in Nabil.
Yeah.
So I had read I believe just one book on Islam before before I met Nabil, and that was in prison. So I read Answering Islam by Norm Geisler and Abdul Salib,
But by the
and
way, he says in prison, I know a lot of David's fans are watching this, but if you don't know who David Wood is, he's just amazing, and he's got an amazing testimony. And I have put a link to it in the description of this video. So what you will want to do is go there and watch it. It's already got 1.7 million views as of today. And what's amazing, as you're watching it, I mean, this thing is just brilliant. As you're watching it, understand that David did this in one take. So
yeah,
go
it's
ahead,
cool.
Dave.
We got that first try too. First try, one take. We just
That's
we started recording it.
unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, back in prison, I read one book because I had some Muslim friends there, and so I studied a little bit, and that was really all I needed. But yeah, Nabil would give lots of arguments. In fact, he gave an entire presentation on scientific miracles of the Muslim sources at your house, and we all sat there and listened to his, I don't remember what it was, half-hour presentation on scientific miracles in the Islamic sources, and then we critiqued him and so on. But I was just in the habit of, if someone gave me an argument, I would want to look it up in the source and read it for myself to make sure that something wasn't being misrepresented. And so when Nabil would give me an argument, I would say, okay, where'd you get that from? Oh, you got that from Sahih Muslim? Well, okay, I'm going to buy Sahih Muslim now. So I would buy Sahih Muslim so I could look up what he's saying. But then I would go back to him and I would say, look what this says in Sahih. Look what this other thing it says in Sahih Muslim that you didn't tell me about. So I just started going through the Muslim sources. And when Nabil became a Christian several years later, I actually thought, cool, I'm done with Islam, because that was the main reason I was studying Islam. I was more interested in atheism. But along the way, I realized, hey, Muslims make pretty cool Christians. So maybe I'll work with this for a little while.
Now I think you told me a couple months ago that, because I remember when Nabil was in our group and you're challenging him, and we're having these between meetings at my home. We would meet at my house the first and third Saturday of every month. We'd all get together. We'd chip in, I think it was $5 or $6. And we had a deal with the local pizza place down the street. They gave us specials. And so we'd buy pizzas. We'd get chips and salsa, wings. And man, it was it was great. But man, I forgot where I was going with this. Yeah, I'm sorry. Forgot where I was going with this.
You were saying you said I told you something a couple months ago.
Oh yeah. So, but between these meetings, we would, David and I and Nabil, we would be emailing one another, this three-way conversation. And David would just be sharing what he's learning and just tearing down at Islam. And it was kind of like a good cop, bad cop. And so he's just really,
because you're the nice guy. And Nabil would be whining to you that I'm being too much of a jerk.
He was. And I'd be saying, well, David, you need to calm down, David. And I'd be providing this evidence for Jesus and Christianity. But man, you'd be going after Islam.
I've still got those emails. We need to do something with those one day.
We do. We should do one of these one day.
Those. That'd be funny.
I would. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, that was it.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Super chat. Wow. Hey, thank you so much. Now,
did
Lisa,
you not know about super chats?
I did, but that's a nice one. Thank you so much, Lisa. Very much appreciated. Now, I haven't really done this before, so am I supposed to do anything else when the super chat comes up, David?
No, this is just that's a super sticker. So that's
super
just
sticker?
a little thing saying you're amazing. She's obviously talking about me.
There you go. Hey, show them your coffee cup, bro.
Oh, they've seen it. They've seen this a million times. Tears?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
some of my viewers haven't seen it, so that's pretty cool. All right. So, yeah, he's whining. We got these things. We'll show him another time. Talk about those another time. So go ahead, man.
Hmm. Oh, what are we talking about?
Well, just your story here. So anyway, so I guess
Oh,
Nabil
yeah,
becomes
yeah,
a
yeah,
Christian later on,
yeah,
and
yeah. So I just
that
ended
was
up.
after I leave for Atlanta.
Hmm.
We're all
Yep,
living in
and then
Virginia Beach. I leave, move my wife and I, my kids. We moved to Atlanta. I took a job down here, and but you kept going on with Nabil, and
yeah, he went off to med school. I went to off to graduate school in philosophy, and yep, it was summer of 2000. What was it? Summer of 2004, 2005. I can't even remember the correct year. I think summer of 2000, summer of
it had to be
2005.
2000. Oh, there's
You
another
know, so
super chat. Thank you so much, Tom. Appreciate that. Well, I don't know that's a super chat, but I guess it was. But yeah,
that's that's a super chat.
thanks, thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. So yeah, it couldn't have been 2004 because I was still in Virginia Beach in
Yeah, it
the
was
summer of 2004.
2005.
Yeah,
It's
so he
2005. Nabil
becomes
became a
a
Christian.
yeah. I remember after my debate with Shabir Ali, you and Nabil were there, and afterward we're walking out. Now Nabil has it one way in his book, Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, but I didn't remember it that way. And the 1 year before Nabil died, he and Michelle were down here for Labor Day
Hmm.
that weekend, and the Habermases are always here. So Gary and Eileen, my wife Debbie was sick that weekend.
Hmm.
I think she had a cold, and it was just breaking her heart because she wanted to be with everyone. But it's like she couldn't be around Nabil because she wanted to see him in a worse way, but she couldn't be around him because he was going through chemo and didn't want to
Hmm.
compromise his immune system. But we were over at Bill and Jan Craig's house, and we were talking about coming out of that thing. And I said, Nabil, I don't remember it quite the way that you have it in your book, but Gary's here. Let me go ahead and tell you the way I remember it, and you and Gary can tell me if this is how. So the way I remember it, you can tell me what you think, David. I remember you are walking with Gary out of the auditorium. You're walking down the steps, leaving the building, going out to the parking lot, and you're with Gary's graduate student as well. And I was behind, walking out with Nabil behind you guys, but I don't know, maybe 30 yards behind. And Nabil and I were talking about the debate, and he said, yeah, I'm kind of confused. I think you won this debate with Shabir tonight. And he said, I think Christianity has some evidence for it. Islam has some evidence. But really, Mike, the only thing you have over Islam, only thing Christianity has over Islam is the resurrection. And I said, did you hear what you just said, Nabil? I mean, if Jesus rose from the dead, it's game, set, match. Christianity's true, period. And he said, well, I guess you're right. And then I said, hey, Gary, catch it, get this. Let Nabil tell him what you just told me. That's how I remember it. What about you?
I don't really remember.
Okay. Nabil
No,
and Gary agreed with me at that point.
one thing that has intrigued me over the years is what stands out to one person does another person doesn't remember. Nabil will bring up something and I'm like, I don't even remember that. And I'll bring up something that was like one of the most important things in some conversation, and he won't remember what I'm talking about. And so like you, when before I met Nabil or my wife, we were over at your house one day hanging out. And at that point, I was planning on being an Apostle Paul type, right? Never getting married, just focusing entirely on ministry and so on. I wasn't saying that, but that's what I was thinking in my head. And then, and then as I was leaving your house, we stopped and you said, "Here, let me pray for you." And you put your hand on me and you prayed, and you start praying, and you start going, "And I pray that he finds an awesome wife," and blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, dude, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm not going that route. So yeah. So anyway, that you probably don't even remember that, but
I
that
don't
happened.
remember it, but I'm glad I prayed that prayer. Boy, God answered it, didn't he?
Yeah. And there was another time I was leaving your house, and I go, you know what I think, where I think atheists are going to go now. I think they're all going to start saying that Jesus never existed. And you looked at me like I was this. That was the stupidest thing anyone had ever said. You looked at me like that, like you can't be that stupid to think that atheists are going to start going around saying that Jesus is a myth. And now it's almost every atheist I run into. So I'm a
Hey, thanks
prophet.
for the super chat, HA. Super sticker, that is. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. No, I don't remember that, David, but that's cool. And that's cool. Well,
Yeah, Nabil
God
didn't
does
even remember
answer
what
prayers too.
this was. I don't even think I've ever mentioned this before. But Nabil and I, when we were in college, we went to an Italian restaurant, and you might remember it. It's Castaldi's. It was over at the big mall in Norfolk, MacArthur Mall.
I don't
There was a
remember
there
it.
was an Italian there was an awesome Italian restaurant there called Castaldi's, and we go in there for lunch one day. We're like, hey, we're out of class. Instead of just grabbing something here on campus, let's go get something awesome at the mall. So we went to Castaldi's, and we sit down there, and the our waiter was really cool, and we start talking with him and stuff like that, and he starts saying, yeah, this is just how I pay the bills right now. I'm a rapper. Right? And I go, hey, I can beatbox. And Nabil goes, come on, man, do a rap for me, man, do a rap for me. And he goes, okay, give me a beat. So I started beatboxing. And it turns out this guy's a Christian rapper, and he does this Christian rap right in Nabil's face. And so, years later, Nabil's become a Christian. Nabil did not remember any of that. And I'm like, how do you not remember a Christian rapper rapping Christian rhymes in your face with me beatboxing in the middle of a restaurant? How do you not remember this? It seems like that would stand out. But nope. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And I've heard you do it, man. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. I got mad skills.
Hey, so let's jump into our topic here.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about Islam now. Man, you've just developed an amazing channel. I mean, here we are. I'm looking at about a million views of the videos on my YouTube channel a year. We're looking to do that now for the second year in a row. It looks like it's going to happen. I'm talking to you the other day, and it's like you're saying, yeah. I said, what? But David, you do that about every 2 weeks now, don't you? And you said, what are you talking about? I'm doing that every week. It's like, he's getting about 1 million views every week on his YouTube channel. That's just amazing. All the people that you're reaching. You're getting death threats on a regular basis. You probably don't even look at them anymore. There's so many of them.
No, only if it's relevant someday. Like I'm just bored and I want to make fun of some jihadis or something. Then I'll take some screenshots of their threats and make a video out of it or something.
Folks, David here is amazing. I remember him saying once that some guy threatened him. He says, I'm going to kill you. And he said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to be at this, First Baptist Church in Orlando next Saturday, and I got a break around noon. I'll tell you what, I'll go out in the parking lot. You can meet me and kill me there. And if you don't show up, I'm going to tell everybody you're a coward and won't stand up for your prophet Muhammad, your false prophet.
Yeah, that's happened. No, that's happened several times. So, and I would start off when I would, if a jihadi said he wanted to kill me or something like that, I'd say, okay, here's my speaking schedule. And then I would start off when I was speaking that day, I would go, all right, before we get started, is Ibrahim here? Ibrahim, are you here? No, Ibrahim? Here's his message that he sent me, and I put it up on the screen. It said he's going to come kill me. Yeah, and then a couple places people said they're actually going to meet me down in New York City. Like they challenged me, you show up at this corner or something like that, then I'll kill you and stuff.
And you've
they
been
never
there
did.
with video cameras, right?
Yeah, one time I had Marie recording. I told her stay away from me, like stay away. Just if someone runs up and shoots me or puts a knife in my back or something, make sure you get some awesome footage. So, yeah.
So Islam, man.
Mm-hmm.
It was either 2005, I think it was 2006, and I was asked to debate ALLthat out in at UC Davis,
Mm-hmm.
University of California, Davis. It was pretty cool. It was a fun debate. It was packed. Um, and I noticed a lot of, well, a number of, striking number of Anglo women
Hmm.
who had converted to Islam.
Hmm.
And I was just surprised because this is just a few years after 9/11, and here
Hmm.
you've got a number of American women who have
Yeah.
converted to Islam. And that just seemed so weird to me.
Hmm.
I don't see that so much anymore, but did you notice something like that? Do you have any
Oh yeah. No,
explanation for that?
yeah, it's pretty straightforward. There were spikes in conversions to Islam after all of those early major terrorist attacks, the 9/11 attacks, the 7/7 attacks in the UK and so on. There were spikes in conversions after those. And part of it, I think, was just after every single terrorist attack, all the media, all the journalists, politicians, they would all invite Muslim speakers on to tell people what Islam is really about, right? And so you had all these Muslim speakers broadcast nonstop, proselytizing on on CNN and MSNBC and NBC, and they're just flat out, Islam means peace, and the Prophet Muhammad, he's so beloved, and he was
Well, even
so such a
President
man of peace.
George Bush was doing that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, everyone was doing that, and so people were doing that, and so it was just this amazing situation where the more violent Islam showed itself to be, the more airtime it got, and the more people converted to it because everyone says to show how tolerant they are, we have to nonstop have Muslims on our stations telling people all about Islam. And suddenly, every politician, every journalist is an expert on Islam, and they're saying, "Oh, Islam means peace, and blah 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 blah." And the Quran says, "If anyone killed a man, it's as if he killed all mankind," and things like that. And so that's one factor. The other factor, with lots of women converting, this is just observation over time. There's usually a guy involved, just so you know.
I know
And
I heard
and
that too.
I'm not knocking that. I mean, I'm not knocking.
They're,
You know,
in other words, they were dating a Muslim guy, right?
yeah, they became interested in a Muslim man and then converted to Islam. They converted to Islam. Now again, I'm not knocking in principle becoming interested in something because someone you like or are attracted to teach you something. People can become interested in things for all kinds of reasons. But if your hormones kind of overwhelm your intellect, right? And so it's just you end up believing some really really weird stuff without investigating it carefully because you're attracted to someone, then yeah, then there's a problem. But yeah, I'd say at least 9 times out of 10, um, Western woman converts to Islam. There's usually a guy involved.
Now, I hear it sometimes said that Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. What do you think of
Mhm.
that?
I'm not so sure anymore. So that claim came out of a Pew Research study several years ago. And what's interesting is Muslims tend to massively misrepresent what's claimed in that article, in that study, because Pew announced Islam is the fastest growing religion, and Muslims then run out and they use it as an argument for Islam. Islam is the world's fastest growing religion. It's because so many people are converting to Islam. Why would so many people be converting to something if it's not true? And so that's how Muslims used that when and notice even if that were correct, that's a silly argument to use. Just because something is growing rapidly doesn't mean
Sure,
that
it
it's
doesn't mean
true.
it's
I mean,
right.
communism spread much faster than Islam has ever spread in its entire history. That has nothing to do with communism being true. Um, but
Hey,
what's
thanks for
interesting
the
is
super chat or sticker there. I can't pronounce that name. I'm sorry, but I do want to thank you for it. Go for it.
that's Hexitas. Um, yeah, so it would be a strange argument. But what's interesting is the same Pew Research study that said Islam is the world's fastest growing religion said why it's the fastest growing religion. And it's because of high birth rates in Muslim countries. And if you look into why the birth rates are so high, it's because of Islam's treatment of women, the impact that Islam has on women and girls and the age of marriage and polygamy and things like that. Whereas, a woman in the West might, in America, might have her first child at 25 or something like that. It's after she's finished school and then she started a career, or she's gone to college, and then she settles down and eventually decides to have a child at 25, and then she has her two kids, and then that's it. In some place like Afghanistan or Pakistan or something like that, girl gets married off in Yemen. They marry off girls at like 9 and 10 there. So in some of these places,
Wow.
by the time a girl is 25, she's on kid number 5 or 6. And so, and a man can have multiple wives and so on. And so the impact is that Muslims just have higher birth rates than anyone else.
Okay.
It was, the area was irrelevant. In other words, if you go to Europe, Muslims had the highest birth rates in Europe. If you go to the Middle East, Muslims had the highest birth rates in the Middle East. If you go to Africa, Muslims had the highest birth rates in Africa. They always end up with the highest birth rates because of Islam's impact on women. It basically turns them into baby making machines. And so, if you actually lay out the argument, that's why Islam was the fastest growing religion globally, high birth rates. As far as why Islam was growing rapidly in the West, it was primarily due to immigration, Muslims leaving Muslim countries and coming to the West because they want to get out of the Muslim countries, right? They want to come to the UK or France or Canada or the United States, and they want to get out of their own countries because they're not exactly the most fun place to live in sometimes. And so when a Muslim would bring up, Islam's the world's fastest growing religion, it must be true. I say, whoa, let's break down here why Islam is growing so rapidly. One, I break down the impact of women, the impact Islam has on women. And then the other thing is, and as far as why Islam is growing rapidly in the West, it's primarily due to immigration, because Islam does a really, really bad job at making countries that people want to live in. I say, so the real argument, if you flesh it out, is Islam has such a horrible impact on women that it treats them like nothing but baby making machines. And it does such a horrible job making countries where anyone wants to live that Muslims are fleeing those countries and moving to the West. And so Islam is growing rapidly worldwide, and it's growing rapidly in the West because Islam has this horrible, horrible impact on women and on the countries it governs. So you're saying that means that Islam is true? That's your argument for why Islam is true? So that's kind of the response I've given for several years. But right now, I can't say that, even with the high birth rates, I can't say that Islam is the world's fastest growing religion, just because there are millions of Muslims who are leaving Islam. The most recent research on Iran is the country has an
Hold on.
official.
I want to get to that and
Mhm.
just real soon. I just want to follow up on something before we go further with that. Are there any countries, Muslim countries, let's say, where life is good even if you're not a Muslim? Like what about,
If you're not a Muslim, no.
yeah? What about Qatar?
Um, no, I mean, it in maybe a place like Dubai or something like that, the UAE. Yeah, some of those places that are very wealthy. Some of them are so secularized. Like, I just got a message from someone in Dubai, and he says everything is decked out for Christmas.
Oh,
Christmas trees everywhere. Santa
wow.
Claus, all that stuff. Everywhere you'd go shopping and stuff. So some of those places have become massively secularized. But as far as places where they take Islam pretty seriously, no, you wouldn't want to live there.
Hey, thanks, Chris Claus, for the super chat. Appreciate that. Um, yeah. Indonesia, I've been there twice, and the
Mm-hmm.
Christians there have told me that they are, lightly persecuted there. Some
Mm-hmm.
places there's some heavy persecution, but for the most part, you can be a Christian there. You got to be careful. You
Mm-hmm.
can't criticize Islam publicly, or
Yeah.
else you could get in some trouble for doing so.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to the area. Like, there are places in Pakistan where you'd be okay. People aren't going to mess with you. There are other places in Pakistan where uh, if a Muslim wants your daughter, he's going to come up, take your daughter, and kidnap her, forcibly convert her, and make her his wife. And then you go to court, and the courts will rule in his favor because he's a Muslim. And so it comes down to area. Indonesia's a big place. So
yeah. What about UAE, United Arab Emirates? What about that?
That's one of the places that is it's not completely secular, but it's pretty darn secular.
Okay. So if the Muslim country is somewhat secular, it's going to allow some freedom. The more secular it is, the more freedom you're going to have to do what you want there in terms of your worldview. But if it's in control of Muslims,
the idea is some of the places, their main focus is money and international business dealings and having business, people come and deposit their money there and so on and make business transactions. And, if jihadis go and kill some Christians, that's just really bad for business. And so they're pretty strict about not letting people cross any lines in those places.
And to be clear here, just because it's secular doesn't mean it's good. I mean, then you've got something totally secular like China, where being a Christian is difficult. North Korea, which is atheistic, man, to be a Christian there is extremely difficult. So a lot of your communist countries, which are complete atheism, you're not going to have freedom there to be a Muslim or a Christian or anything else other than an atheist. So, okay. You said a lot of Muslims are leaving Islam. This is leading to like a collapse of Islam today. And what's going on? You started to mention Iran. Stuff going on there.
So Iran officially has a Muslim population of like 99.5%. And that's because apostasy.
Thanks, frequency. Appreciate it.
You don't have to announce every single one.
All right. Just so thanks. Like I said, this is my first time. But if I don't mention you, thank you so much.
Yeah, they kind of stay at the top. What you do is you kind of mention them in like clusters. You know what I mean?
How do they stay at the top? I don't see them going to the top.
Oh yeah, you're not looking at the YouTube thing there. Yeah, they stay up on top of the YouTube page for a while. I don't know. You do you. So Iran has a population officially of 99.5% Muslims. And that's because apostasy is punishable by death. And so obviously if they're doing a census and they ask you, are you still a Muslim? Of course you're still a Muslim. But they've done digital surveys where your life isn't in jeopardy and so on. And basically around 40% of the population of Iran is identifies as Muslim anymore. So 40%. That means that Iran actually has a non-Muslim majority in the country. You've got atheists, you've got agnostics, you've got Zoroastrians, you've got Christians, and they just aren't free to talk about it because you have the mullahs running the country and they'll execute you. But that sort of thing is happening over and over and over again, even before the rise of ISIS. I read an article about the younger generation in Iraq, and they totally despised Islam. And again, this is before ISIS. It was saying the younger generation just looks at Islam as what's causing their problems and what's causing problems in the world. And then, of course, you had the rise of ISIS, and so now it's even more so. And so what you have is in lots of Muslim countries, and I hear from people, I get comments all the time, every day, messages and YouTube comments and so on, and they're saying, David, me and all my friends are not Muslims. We don't believe in Islam, but none of us can say anything. And people say, hey, my entire family's no longer Muslim, but we have to keep up appearances and stuff like that. So you have these massive numbers in the million. And this is, by the way, this is not just according to me or according to some messages I'm getting. I posted a video recently with a Muslim scholar saying that 24% of young Muslims are leaving Islam. So 24%, you're talking a quarter of the young generation of Muslims are leaving Islam. And so a quarter of young Muslims are leaving Islam. I saw another Muslim scholar who said that somewhere around 5% of the population, even in conservative Muslim countries, are actually closet atheists who can't speak out. And so Islam just seems to be dissolving from within. And anyway, that's why I said I can't say that Islam's the fastest growing religion, because when we talked about Islam growing through birth rates, lots of Muslims heard Islam's the fastest growing religion. Oh, so many people are converting to it. When even back then, the number, so this is several years ago when the study came out, even back then in places like the United States, the number of people who were converting to Islam, because some people do convert to Islam, the number of people converting to Islam was offset by the number of people who were leaving Islam. So Islam wasn't gaining any ground at all.
It's like the leaky bucket.
Yeah, Islam wasn't gaining any ground through conversions. It was gaining ground through birth rates and through immigration. But now that so many Muslims are leaving Islam in Muslim countries, I don't know. I mean, you can have high birth rates, but if your kid, if 24% of your kids are leaving Islam, and that's accelerating because it wasn't like that 5 years ago. It wasn't like that 10 years ago. This is rapidly accelerating. I'm not sure how fast you guys are growing anymore. You might be shrinking, even with the birth rates.
So if some of these countries had some free elections, they may not be Muslim countries for much longer, huh?
No, there have been Muslim scholars who say without the apostasy laws, Islam would have collapsed. Islam would have already collapsed.
Wow.
And I mean, hey, you got over 600 people watching you live.
Man, that's pretty cool. Yeah, thanks so much. And I've seen a couple of more super chats, stickers come in. Thank you so much, everyone, for your support in that sense. I appreciate you coming on, man. You had said something. We did last year. We did a Fly on the Wall series. There's 3 videos, and in fact, I've put a link to that in the description of this video. And you get more into your conversion experience. You get more into what led you to start a YouTube channel to expose a lot of the problems with Islam. And in one of those, I think it was the third one, you said if Christians would get this one thing, it could make a huge difference in talking to Muslims.
Oh, I believe it would be ball game.
Yeah. What was that?
It'd be game over. That was I've got tons of videos on this on my channel, and it's something where when a Christian says it, the Muslim will generally dismiss it because he's so entrenched in his view that the Quran affirms the corruption of our scriptures. And then if he goes to his Muslim apologist will basically just, assuming they've actually read the Quran, they have to just lie to him. Basically, here's the thing. Your average Muslim knows that the Quran affirms the inspiration of the Jewish and Christian scriptures, affirms the initial inspiration. And it's because there are passages like Surah 3, verses 3-4, which talk about Allah revealing the Torah and the gospel and so on. But your average Muslim also believes that the book's been corrupted, and they believe this not because the Quran says it, but because they know the Bible doesn't line up with the Quran. So according to the Bible, Jesus is the divine Son of God who died on the cross for sins and rose from the dead. Doesn't fit with Islam. So they conclude, and they're taught this by their leaders, that the Quran's position is that Allah revealed scriptures to the Jews and Christians, and then the Jews and Christians corrupted their scriptures. That's not what the Quran says. The Quran doesn't come close to saying that. The Quran affirms not only the initial inspiration, but also the preservation and the authority of the present authority of the Torah and the gospel. Muhammad in the Hadith affirmed that Jews and Christians still have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God. So that's the position of the Quran. That's the position of Muhammad. But if you flesh this out, what you end up with is Islam just self-destructs. It just completely self-destructs because of this. It's affirming scriptures that contradict it. So, um, because there are two possibilities. Either we have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God, or we don't. We've got a corrupted book or something else, right? If we have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God, Islam is false because Islam contradicts our book on basic doctrines. But if we don't have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God, Islam is still false because Islam affirms that we have the inspired, preserved, authoritative word of God. So if the Bible's the word of God, Islam is false. If the Bible's not the word of God, Islam is false. Either way, Islam is false. Now, again, if they go to their apologists, their apologists will say, "Oh yes, well, Surah 2 verse 79 says that the Bible's been corrupted, and Surah 3 verse 78 says that the Bible's been corrupted." And if you actually read these passages in context and you look at the historical background, they're saying the exact opposite. None of these passages make sense if the Bible's been corrupted, and so it's just massive misrepresentation. And they have to do this. Their apologists have to do this because if they're honest and they say, nope, yep, the Quran affirms the Bible, then Islam just self-destructs. And so it takes a while to get that to sink in with a Muslim. And so that's why I say if Christians actually learned it so that every Christian is constantly bringing this up with Muslims, then that's ballgame because Islam just self-destructs.
Let me ask you something. Mm-hmm. And hey, again, thank you for those of you who sent it in super chats and stickers. All right, so when I'm out there, I'll say, okay, Jesus rose from the dead. Christianity's true, and it was true before any of the New Testament was written. So even if the Gospels do have some errors in it, even if they did contradict one another, it wouldn't be a negator for Christianity because Christianity was true before the Gospels were even written, if Jesus rose from the dead.
Yeah.
So Christianity does not stand or fall on the inerrancy of Scripture. What if a Muslim were to say, well, that part of the Quran is mistaken? Could Islam survive? Is the truth of Islam grounded in the inerrancy of the Quran?
Yeah. Yes,
it is.
Yeah.
And why is that?
Because in Christianity, so in Christianity, Jesus dies on the cross, he rises from the dead. His followers are going around preaching Christianity before the New Testament has even been written. So as you pointed out, Christianity was true before the New Testament was even before the first book of the New Testament was even written. Christianity was already true. Jesus rose from the dead. In Islam, the Quran is supposedly the eternal speech of Allah that is revealed to Muhammad. Muhammad supposedly has no input into this book. It's the eternal speech of Allah. So if it's wrong and then it's not the eternal speech of Allah. Well, Islam falls apart then. If it's not if the Quran is not what it claims to be, that's what Islam is based on. So even when Nabil was investigating, he said he realized that there are three important things for him to investigate as far as Christianity, because there are kind of three things that need to be true for Christianity to be true. Jesus had to die on the cross for sins. He had to rise from the dead, and he has to be Lord. So those are the things he focused on there. When we started examining the foundations of Islam, he said it was Muhammad and the Quran. Muhammad has to be a true prophet, and the Quran has to be the eternal perfect speech of Allah. If either one of those things turns out to be false, then Islam collapses. Yeah, and matter of fact, this kind of leads us back into the topic on the collapse of Islam, because one of the main arguments that Muslims have been using for a long time is based on a kind of silly interpretation of Surah 15 verse 9 of the Quran, which says, Allah says, I've sent the reminder and I will protect it or guard it or something like that, right? That's the idea. And so they take this to mean that Allah is going to perfectly and miraculously preserve right down to the letter the Quran. And that anytime a scribe sits down to write, copy the Quran, it's going to be perfect right down to the letter. He couldn't make a mistake if he wanted, right? And so the claim, and I have Muslim apologetics books in here. I don't mean by Christians. I mean apologetics books by Muslims to convince people that Islam is the truth. They say that not a single letter has ever differed in any manuscript of the Quran. It's been perfectly preserved right down to the letter from the
Wow.
time it was revealed to Muhammad.
Seems like
Now,
that's easily refuted.
it's massively easily refuted, right? So for years, Nabil and I were kind of source based, meaning that we would just quote Muslim sources that talk about chapters being forgotten because people were too lazy to recite them, large passages coming up missing, verses being eaten by a sheep. You can read in their sources, hey, there's these verses were eaten by a sheep. They're not in the Quran today. What happened to them, right? So that was our approach.
They had just had a string of bad luck.
Wow. Man, I miss the days of you and Nabil going back and forth with your awesome puns. So you have those, and that was our approach. But now you have people who take different Qurans from different parts of the world and show that Muslims in different parts of the world, if you take a Quran from Morocco, it doesn't line up with a Quran from Saudi Arabia. There are different Qurans that are used in different parts. Now, they're not completely different. They still have the same number of chapters and so on like that. They still have the same verses and so on, but there are certainly differences. There are different words and so on with different meanings and so different translations.
I didn't know that. I thought there was an Egyptian text from something like 1929 or something like that.
1920, yeah, the 1924. That's the Hafs edition, and that's standard for a majority of the world's Muslims. But some people just didn't adopt that. They still use their own Qurans. And so you had people like Jay Smith and Hatun Tash going to Speaker's Corner and actually holding up Qurans. The Muslims are, oh, perfect preservation. It's a miracle. There's only one Quran, no difference. And they would put the Qurans side by side and say, okay, what is this? You Arabic speakers, you Arabic speaking Muslims, what does this say? Okay, now what does this say? Is that the same? And you got all these stunned Muslims going, and the accusation, I would post video clips from some of this, and I would get accusations that they actually printed up their own Qurans, that Jay and Hatun were actually printing up their own Qurans and making changes in them and stuff. And they're getting these from Muslim bookstores. And wow. So you have that, and then you have the people who actually go through Quran manuscripts. So earlier this year, Dan Brubaker started posting videos where he's just posting pictures of manuscripts of the Quran and showing how they're different. And
wow.
in one of his videos, he puts up a page of a manuscript of the Quran, and he said there are 11 differences from the Quran you have today on this one page. There are 11 variants on this one page. And so he's not mean like the rest of us. Like, I would put that and go, where are you getting this stupid nonsense about the perfect preservation of the Quran from with this? He just kind of puts it out there, right? So he's nice. But the point is, it was coming from every side that this is a bunch of complete nonsense about this perfect preservation of your book as this miracle of Islam. And then earlier this year, Sheikh Yasser Qadi was in an interview, and some private emails of his had been leaked by a Muslim, Fareed, of Fareed Responds or Fareed Leaks. Leaked his emails, saying that he had some doubts about some things, mainly the whether Muslim theories that are meant to explain the differences that we have in the Qurans today actually work and can stand up to scrutiny. And so Fareed took this as Yasser Qadi is a secret false teacher, and so he leaked the messages, and then Yasser Qadi ended up on an interview with Muhammad Hijab, and Muhammad Hijab starts pressing him on this issue. And in that interview, we call it the holes in the narrative interview, because Yasser Qadi said, I'm just going to say there are some holes in the narrative, right? And it was amazing because he didn't offer any solutions. He basically said that Muslim scholars, they look at these manuscripts and so on, and they look at the different qira'ats, these different editions of the Quran, and they have their theories about what accounts for these differences and so on. How this lines up with their view of Allah preserving the Quran. And he's saying that in Islam, we have this red line that we won't cross. We'll give a response and we'll just say, okay, that's good. He says, but if you bring that up to a Western academic scholar, they don't have that red line. And we give them our theory, and they immediately refute it. And he says, and they're right because they're quoting your own sources. So he's basically saying our theories, our Muslim theories about how to reconcile all this with our belief that Allah is protecting the Quran, they don't work. And as soon as we submit them to scrutiny of non-Muslim scholars, they just rip our theories apart. So he said this in an interview. Muslims started freaking out and complaining, saying they were losing their faith in the Quran. What's going on here? So Hijab cut that part out of the interview on his video, and then
Mm.
But Yasser Qadi posted the entire video, so you can still see it on Yasser Qadi's channel. Then Yasser Qadi, he started getting so many comments from Muslims saying that they were now doubting the Quran that he had to shut down the comment section. Then Hijab deleted the entire interview. Then Yasser Qadi deleted the entire interview, and that was the beginning of the most epic meltdown I've ever seen of any ideology. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen any position implode, because it was almost like some of these guys, they started losing their minds, right? Like once, because we all started, all the Christian apologists who we started going, we told you so. We told you, we told you that your arguments don't work. And so we started using clips of this interview, because we downloaded it immediately right after that, so that once they deleted it, then we still had it. So we start posting clips of Yasser Qadi admitting all of these things. Yasser Qadi starts freaking out and filing false copyright complaints, right? We're allowed to quote people, right? He knows that. He's a scholar. He knows that. But he starts filing false copyright complaints. He'll lose the copyright complaints, right? He'll lose them, but your video's taken down for a couple of weeks while they sort things out. But he's filing, but then he just keeps filing them. He keeps filing false copyright complaints against people. And I mean, keep in mind, this would be like William Lane Craig having YouTube take down a bunch of atheist videos that are responding to him and showing clips of his debate or something like that. This would be like William Lane Craig.
Is this guy as big in that world as Bill Craig is in the Christian? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So this would be like William Lane Craig freaking out and again, posting false copyright complaints that he knows are false. He knows are false because he keeps losing them, but he keeps filing the same one against different people and so on. Then he started doxing people. You know what doxing is?
I don't.
Doxing is when you give out people's personal information online to put their lives in danger, right? He starts doxing so he's filing the false copyright complaints to get their personal information. Then he's leaking their personal information as a threat to people, right? This would be like Craig, right? I mean, it's actually different from Craig, because if Craig did dox someone and leak some information, it's not a threat. When Yasser Qadi does it and he says, hey, you're attacking the Quran, here's this person's real name, that's a threat. That's hey, I'm trying to actually get you killed here. So then Muhammad Hijab, he started losing his mind. We'd go live and he would actually come in the chat and start telling us to do perverted sexual things to each other, telling us to give each other golden showers and stuff. That's like, people had to look up some of the stuff he was saying because they had no idea what it is. But it was like the golden showers, like where some people like being urinated on and stuff like that. So he starts posting. You're looking at me like, what? It's like, yeah, this is a mainstream, very popular Muslim apologist. He's the one who had interviewed Yasser Qadi. He's being blasted by his fellow Muslims, and that interview is being used by us to show that the Quran's hasn't been perfectly preserved. And he just loses his mind. He starts posting all this perverted sexual stuff, telling people to do this perverted stuff to each other. Then he starts posting all these comments saying how the wives of some Christians and atheists actually want the Muslims to be conquered, to be raped by them because they want a real man and stuff. He's posting this stuff on Twitter. He starts posting pictures of the wives of critics of Islam with wow, like these veiled threats of rape and torture and stuff like that. So this guy's completely.
Where's he posting these, on his website or on YouTube?
He was posting on Twitter. He was posting this stuff on Twitter. Yeah.
And did Twitter censor him?
No. He's good. So you had that from Hijab. You had Menj was doing Muslim apologetics before most of these guys, anyone had ever heard of most of these guys. He got arrested for child pornography, and it was amazing because it was actually on television. It was actually on television in his country that he was being arrested, but they blurred him out. But people noticed from the bookshelf where he records his videos that this is the same guy, right?
Wow.
So he got busted. Ali Dawa started posting prayers for Muslims to join with him in prayer for Allah to kill us by giving us diseases and things like that. He started sending threats, posting on YouTube, death threats against ex-Muslims, saying, once we rise to power, you're going to be killed by the emir. The Islamic State is going to kill you, and we'll be watching. and YouTube's totally fine with that. Meanwhile, if I say anything that hurts anyone's feelings, YouTube might ban me for hate speech. And so these are the things that have been going. Other Muslims started doxing people. Ijaz Ahmed, that was one of Shabir Ali's disciples, and worked for Shabir's ministry up there. He started just hurling racial. I can't even say them because you don't want to. But he'd be in an online conversation with somebody, starts hurling these racial slurs at people, doxing them, doxing their families, telling people where their families live.
This is one of Shabir's disciples doing this.
Yeah. Shabir had to put out a statement saying, "Hey, he no longer works for me."
Good for
because
him.
he's And then later,
I can't imagine Shabir doing that.
No, yeah, I can't either. And then later, more recently, Shabir, he kind of got smoked by Anthony Rogers in 2 debates. And then Ijaz posted on Twitter, "Has Shabir won any debate in the past 5 years? I can't think of any." So, and then he threw Shabir under the bus. And so this has just been going nonstop. And then finally, Yasser Qadi posted a video response that was supposed to answer us. And all this dude did was insult me. like you can look at, he's like, "This guy's a vulgar, obscene, evil jerk." And he just goes on this long tirade of insults and says, I don't even need to answer anything he said. His own manners refute him. And it was so incredibly pathetic that he acted like he was answering me when all he did was he never answered one thing I've ever said in my entire life. And so this has just been everyone. I know, because I'm telling you, you haven't been following what's been going on, but I have never seen. I mean, if you can imagine, this would be like, William Lane Craig and James White and you and Gary Habermas, a bunch of Christian apologists, all just freaking out, losing their minds, doxing people, talking about perverted sexual stuff, hurling insults at people. It was just all at once. And wow. It seems like they're catching on to the fact that people are leaving Islam in droves, and they realize that the arguments that they've been using, like the perfect preservation of the Quran and all this stuff, people aren't buying it anymore. It's being exposed. And it's like, wait a minute, that's all we had to go on. All we had that we could rely on were threats and intimidation, threatening people into being, not apostatizing, threatening people, keeping people in like that, and then making stuff up in support of Islam. And now it's not working anymore, and we don't know what else to do. We don't know what else to do. And they're losing, the apologists are losing their minds, man.
That's amazing. I was not aware of all that going on. I live in a little different world of New Testament studies. That's where my focus is. But wow, that's amazing.
And so, I mean, if that's what's been going on just this year, and you're talking just in the last 6 months, my goodness, what is 2021 going to be like?
Wow. Mm-hmm. David, thanks for coming on, man. Yeah, you say you want to keep this for about an hour. So let me just, before you give a closing comment here, let me just say, for those of you of my typical viewers who are not familiar with David, this guy's huge. He's got nearly 600,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. Go to Acts 17 Apologetics, or just go to YouTube and type in David Wood, and you'll see his little character on there. And he's got some phenomenal videos. He's putting out about a video a day, and he's getting about 1 million views every week. Go check it out. It's some really good stuff. You can go to his Patreon account as well and help support him. And I think, David, there's a way to support you on YouTube as well, right?
Yeah, people can sign up as channel members and so on.
Okay. And for those of you who may be visiting and listening tonight from David, you're familiar with David. Let me just tell you a little about our channel here. And if you're interested, if it sounded interesting to you, subscribe to our channel and click that bell button. We're trying to make our videos more here. Some of them are fun, like we have a Fly on the Wall series where I had a lot of folks over time saying, hey, when you sit down, you get together with David or Bill Craig, Gary Habermas, Craig Keener, people like that, would love to be a fly on the wall and hear you guys discussing. Well, that's what the Fly on the Wall series is. These are kind of, most of them are 15 minutes to 25 minutes, and just sitting there and talking to, hearing us chat about some theological, philosophical matters. We've got some serious educational videos. We did earlier this year. We did a five-part series on the formation of the biblical canon. Learn how the books of the Old Testament were chosen, the books of the New Testament, whether the canon's closed, why the Apocrypha is not in the Protestant Bible, or why it is in the Catholic and Orthodox Bible, and what are the differences between the Bibles. We've got Dan Wallace on the Greek manuscripts. We've got him on various English translations. We have one of my former students, Joshua Pelletier. He did his master's thesis. I supervised it on some prolegomena related to the Gospel of Mark. Who wrote Mark? When was it written? Is it relying on Petrine tradition and so forth? We've got a bunch of these out. Just did a 4-part series with Dale Allison on his new forthcoming book on resurrection. We've got a Fly on the Wall series with J. Warner Wallace and another one with Frank Turek coming up early next year. So join us, subscribe if any of that sounds of interest to you, and we've got plenty more that's coming. Really appreciate you joining us tonight, and thank you so much for those who gave the super chats and stickers. And David, any closing comments?
No, just really, really excited. 2021 is going to be awesome. Corona or no Corona, 2021 is going to be awesome. Mark my words.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to continue following you too, brother. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you. Merry Christmas to all of our visitors, those of you viewing tonight, and Happy New Year to you. God bless you. Good night, everyone.